we do have a bit of a distinction on a slightly lighter note. I think I beat him by about 3 blocks. So many of the men and women we work with, you have got to fly in and out of this airport and Dulles every week to go home, and it's one of the reasons why there may be more congressional interference on these airports. Don and I have the distinctions, and I think we actually beat Eleanor Holmes Norton, the D.C. representative. We live closer to the Capitol than all other 535 members of Congress, House, and Senate combined. So.
Exactly. If there's no traffic at the airport, I can get home in 13 minutes. Yeah. Which is a good reason. I'm so glad Secretary Hegseth let you come this morning. So, a threat to our national security. Good stuff. I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm very honored to share a stage with my dear friend. We've been friends before we were married, and now we have grandchildren. I spent one of the best years of my life working on the potential presidential campaign of the most popular governor in Virginia history, which turned out to be better in chair than Tel Committee and all kinds of good stuff. But yeah, you're one of my heroes and a dear friend. And thank you, all of you, for being here. You know, this is we're Democrats, but this is very much not a partisan issue. It's a shared responsibility that transcends party lines, geography, technology. And every time we board a plane, we have to trust that we've built a system that's going to get us there. So we want to thank all the engineers, the mechanics, the air traffic controllers, the flight crews, safety inspectors, even Jack Potter, for taking us this long. And we've seen real progress. The Commercial Aviation Safety Team, CAST, has helped reduce fixed-wing commercial aviation fatalities by over 80% through data-driven collaborative initiatives. I think one of the reasons why the crash was so upsetting was because it had been so long since we'd had one. We'd forgotten what it was like. But the work's never done. And Matt, thank you so much. Just to have a representative of the families and the victims here tonight, this morning, is very, very important. At the heart of all this, is the congressional work we do on rigorous oversight, continuous improvement, meaningful accountability. We asked the Army for a pause, immediate pause on helicopter training flights near the airport and to decrease helicopter traffic in the region. We've done this, again, in a bipartisan way. They paused all unnecessary helicopter traffic, and DoD is reducing helicopter flights by up to 10%. We do have people down south on the Parkway who are upset about the new helicopter routes, but they're away from the airport, which is the most important part. We asked the FAA to review the total flight volume of DCA to determine if capacity levels are pushed too far. I actually had a nice phone conversation with Secretary Duffy about trying to do at DCA what they'd done at Newport News, or Newport, in terms of reducing. He said it wasn't in his bailiwick, but and on the House Transportation and Appropriations Committee, Delegate, or Congressman Subramaniam, Amo, and I successfully secured language requiring DOT to conduct an independent safety review of DCA's airspace, civil and military coordination, operational safety. And if flight volume is found to be untenable, we want to call on the FAA to reduce those flight volumes. As Jack has told us years and years, again, this is airport designed for 14 million, doing 25 million per year, and the busiest runway in the United States. We also requested the Department of Transportation's OIG, the Inspector General, to conduct an audit of the collision in addition to the forthcoming NTSB report. And with Senator Warner, we called for the Army's Office of Inspector General to conduct a similar audit. The Army IG turned us down. So last week we submitted an amendment to the NDAA for fiscal year 2026, requiring the Department of Defense's Office of Inspector General to complete this audit. The NDAA comes to the floor this week. Lots of amendments. We'll be working hard on all this stuff. Finally, the FAA reauthorization included valuable modernization for the air traffic control system. Everything from runway maintenance to surface awareness initiatives. But we've all got to get it done. As we've known for a long, long time, FAA modernization has been something that has, I think, been around most of my adult life. There's a lot more to do and to make it happen. So we're really grateful that you're here and eager to learn from all of you. So.
Adam?
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Warner and Congressman Beyer, for convening us and also not just for your work today, but for long before January, being focused on flight traffic and safety, and also the work that your staffs have done on airport noise for the residents of this area. You know, safety is paramount, but that is notable that you have been calling for reforms and to flight congestion long before this tragedy occurred. This is largely a federally and the Airports Authority run facility, but I'm happy to be here to listen and see what we can do to assist.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Why don't we start with, Matt, why don't you start to kind of give us a sense of your loss so that as we go around and talk about the technical and things we can improve, we remember that in many ways the tragedy that took place on January 29th is what forced this issue to the forefront, something that some of us have been talking about, concerned about for some time. But please, Mr. Collins.
Thank you, Senator Warner, and thank you, Congressman Beyer, for having us here today, having me here today. My name is Matthew Collins. I lost my younger brother, Christopher, at the young age of 42 on January 29th. And what started for me as a, how can I honor my brother's memory has really turned into, I've met a number of other families from this flight, been working with a number of other members of the flight on trying to make improvements, and now it's more, how do we honor these 67 people? It's not all about my brother now. It's how do we honor these 67 people, and how do we prevent something like this from ever happening again? And I'm not going away. We're not going away. We want to see change, and you're going to keep seeing us until change starts happening. But thank you, Senator Warner, for convening this today and inviting me to be here.
Thank you. I would say this, so it's, and Don and I at the federal level, and Adam at the state level, we're committed to having that honor. We had an amendment in the bill that I was not too happy about that came within one vote that would have, one, restored some of the candidly, I think, terribly ill-advised funding cuts to MWA that were slipped into a bill in terms of trying to, in a sense, double the rent that Airports Authority paid to the federal government, and would have restored that, and part of those dollars would have gone to a permanent memorial to the victims of Flight 5342. So why don't we start over here, and Carlos, we'll end up with you, Jack, because, or maybe, well, maybe we ought to start with you, because you set the stage overall.
Okay, so I'm Jack Potter, the CEO of the Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority, so I have Reagan and Dulles airports under my jurisdiction. We're federally owned airports. Let me just start out by saying, I've expressed it to Matt, that I'm very, very sorry for your loss and, all the families who've lost and loved ones, families and friends. That's what this is all about. Our hearts reach out to you, and we were all there that night, and I tell you, it was a very, very tragic night, something we all have to work very hard to make sure is never repeated again, and I think we're all committed to that. I would say that we at the Airports Authority are part of the NTSB investigation, so I can't comment on anything specific to that. Prior to the Airports Authority, I was the Postmaster General for 10 years, and so I've been at the Airports Authority for about 15 years. The safety at the airports is paramount. It's our top priority. We work very hard to do our part at the airport, whether it's runway safety and movement of traffic on the ground at the airport. I will just say I want to thank both you, Congressman Beyer, Senator Warner, for all of your actions and the actions on the part of everyone on Capitol Hill that are trying to address this issue. I would comment that it was a real surprise to me that night, suddenly next to me was Secretary Duffy, who was on the spot, his second day on the job, had great conversation with him, and he has truly been a champion going forward, as well as you both have been, and you know, the delegates from this area, all of our representatives, to address the modernization of air traffic control. It's something, as you, Congressman Bayer, said, has been around for years, but I really feel that the momentum is there. Unfortunately, it was driven by this accident, but the momentum is there, and hats off to Secretary Duffy, because he truly is championing that, and it's something that's been long, long overdue. You know, I can't say enough about the need for that. It starts with that, and then, as you said, Senator Warner, you know, I look at what's happened here at Reagan National, a very, very congested airspace in general, just with commercial aviation, but on top of it, with all of the, you know, aircraft movement that are associated with the federal government. And it's just a microcosm of what's coming, because when you think about some of the new technologies, the drones, the eVTOLs, the ability to move aircraft, smaller aircraft in a congested airspace, it's critically important that we we modernize our air traffic control. Very, very complicated. Who owns what, you know, is going to be a problem. Local jurisdictions own airspace up to 400 feet, except around the airports, right? And so how we manage that airspace going forward, and what we do today to fix today's problems and modernize it, but also in the process of modernizing, think about what the future is going to be, and making sure that what's designed today works today and gets us up to where we need to be, but anticipates where we're going. So really appreciate you having this, you know, little conference here, but more importantly, it's what happens going forward throughout the whole industry to make sure that we're modernizing aircraft, we're modernizing, you know, the technology, communication technology between aircraft, and we're modernizing this airspace. So we never have to sit here and talk about this again. So thank you for being here today.
And I would hope as people go around, and if you've, because I want to make sure that we've got enough time that we actually have the conversations, so that if you could, you know, if you say, you know, here are a couple things that we think specifically would move us forward, that would be great. Tom?
Okay, thank you. I'm also with the Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority. My name is Tom Beatty. I am Executive Vice President and Chief Operations Officer. And overall responsibility for Reagan National, Dulles International, our Office of Public Safety, which is police, fire, and our 911 system, our strategy and operation, and what I'll call other related functions. Proud to say that I've been with the Airport Authority for 28 years, and my experience has run the gamut from aviation safety from an operational standpoint, but also from a compliance standpoint, and that follows FAA Part 139. Typical type projects, anywhere from the planning to design construction, but just to name a few, I think maybe some of you are aware of the recent runway rehabilitation we just completed over here at National Airport over a year ago. But that also includes everything from geometric improvements to environmental concerns to lights, signs, markings, everything that we're talking about today, just the overall of the safety of the airport. The other aspect I like to also say is that, you know, that's the physical aspect of what we do, but there's also the other aspect also under FAA Part 139, and that's the safety management system. I know that we are very embedded in that, and our team is. And the safety management system is a new program following those requirements, focused on promoting a safety culture and really focusing on prevention rather than reaction to incidents. So with that, thank you for the opportunity. Happy to be part of the conversation today.
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Dan Hamilton. I'm the NACA Program Management Organization Rep. First off, for Mr. Collins, for your family and all the families involved, we express our deepest condolences for the tragic event that took place. For Senator Warner and Congressman Bayer, thank you very much for your ongoing support, especially with FAA reauthorization. These are absolutely monumental times and unprecedented times for us as an aviation community. Just to kind of echo Mr. Beatty, one of the best things that we can do as a safety culture and safety community is to encourage that safety culture that Tom mentioned. With all the voluntary safety reporting that we have, both independently as air traffic controllers, obviously the safety management system that the FAA has, and all the users of the NAS. As this NAS grows and expands and continues to evolve that safety culture, I think it's important that us as a community comes together, has those robust conversations, and keeps an open dialogue moving forward. So again, thank you for everybody, and I appreciate everybody's time.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name's Tom Bo Jones. I'm the director of the FAA-designated UAS test site in Virginia, which Senator Warner helped stand up coming out of the 2012 FAA Reauthorization Act. I first want to say to Mr. Collins, thank you for being here, for representing the families. I'm sorry that a tragedy like this has to happen. Aviation, oftentimes rules and regulations, sadly, are written in blood. That's an unfortunate truth, but I'm hopeful that here today, for your brother's legacy, we can make some differences in aviation safety. I started my career as an Army Black Hawk pilot. Flew for the Army for 12 years, and then I flew for the Coast Guard for 13. And today, I actually am in a flying club, flying general aviation aircraft. So while I'm here professionally as a drone pilot, aviation safety, is certainly paramount in both of those fields for me. I think, first I want to say, Senator Warner and Representative Byer, thank you for putting this forward, this proposed legislation. I think the thing that really I want to focus on from a professional capacity as a test site director is your provision on closing some of the allowances that allow military aircraft not to broadcast ADS-B. And coincidentally, I think this aligns nicely with the new drone rulemaking, which some of you may or may not be aware of. There's a notice of proposed rulemaking that came out last month. It's called Part 108, and the provision in that rule that aligns nicely here is that all drone pilots have to give way per 91-113 to all other aircraft. And that's fine. Drone pilots are fine with being in that seat. In order to do that, drone pilots need to be able to detect other aircraft. There's a number of technologies that are in development to try to make that happen, but the best technology that already exists that we've tested that does really well is ADS-B, because it's network. We can see plenty of aircraft coming from plenty of distances. So in that new provision in Part 108 suggests that aircraft that are operating beneath 500 feet, not near airports, will have the right-of-way as long as they have ADS-B broadcasting. They will have the right-of-way over drones. And so it's a provision that's trying to encourage that we step into modern times, and all pilots, because it's not just military, there are some pilots that don't have ADS-B that are outside of certain areas that don't require it. All pilots will be able to have drones avoid them if they're broadcasting. So if that's in that proposed rule, I would encourage folks to pay attention to that. It closes on October the 6th, and it aligns really nicely with the provision here, which is to try to close some of those, I won't say loopholes, but some of the robustly used provisions that allow military aircraft not to broadcast ADS-B.
No,
So
it's a
thank you.
loophole. We all call it ADS-B, military DOD loophole. We gotta close
Loophole.
it.
All right. Thank you, Senator Warner, and thank you for having me here.
Mr. Collins, thank you for being here. Senator Warner, Representative Byer, thank you for the invite. Tim Johnson, assistant professor for aviation and air traffic control at Hampton University, and also the program director. Also retired Air Force as an air traffic controller. And then just last year, I was on the National Academy's staffing for air traffic control staffing. So we just finished that, which I'm sure you just recently got to see. Why am I at the table? So throughout my career, it's all about training. And being an air traffic CTI school with the FAA, we're partners with the FAA, we teach the curriculum that the FAA teaches. However, to be a part of FAA, to be a controller, you have to go to Oklahoma. You have to go to Academy, centralized location. To be a pilot, you can go many different locations. So that is one of the things that I want to discuss more about is for training and stuff like that, with, I guess, colleges becoming enhanced controllers where they don't have to go to Oklahoma to go out into the workforce. The burden is still on those universities instead of, finding funding and grants to get simulators become enhanced that they have at Oklahoma. So that's one of the things that, you know, if we're going to get more people out into the workforce for that training to get all that, we need more people there. And right now, Oklahoma, you know, it's just not enough. So for more colleges to become enhanced, you know, let's get that funding that the same, you know, pilot simulators and things of that can also have. Thank you.
Good morning. Kent Lewis. I'm the flight safety manager at Hampton University. And first, Mr. Collins, I'd like to thank you for being here and being the voice for the families and friends of the flight that evening. We've been in that situation before myself with some of my friends, and I know it's not a great space to be, but I know that what you're doing will lead to great things down the road, and I appreciate your effort and all that of all the other family and friends that are chipping in to push this forward for continuous improvement. Senator Warner and Representative Beyer, thank you for providing this venue for this discussion to open. This is an area I've been studying since the 1980s when I was a Lance Corporal in the United States Marine Corps, and they gave me my first safety position as the Technical Publications Officer for the squadron. So had positions of increasing responsibility through the Marine Corps with attending the Aviation Safety Officer course and being the Director of Safety for Marine Corps Station Yuma, Arizona, when I retired in 1999. I flew helicopters in the Marine Corps and also fixed wing, was a flight instructor, and then went to work for Delta Airlines. And in working with the Airline Pilots Association, which is the largest air safety organization, volunteer organization in the world, I'll steal some of your thunder, developed human factors and safety management system courses, worked with the FAA with Dr. Don Arndt, developing the first SMS programs for the airlines back in mid-2000s. So to see these programs become online is great, but we have a lot of work to do. We want to get to the highest level in these systems, which is level 4, which is a continuous improvement level where we have the culture where we can talk openly and we trust each other and we can start checking boxes off with the NTSB list that they give us every few years and correct those things. So thank you for having this discussion today.
Hey everyone, good morning. Sean Maxwell with the Airline Pilots Association in the Government Affairs Department. Happy to be here, and thank you, Senator and Congressman, for convening us. And I'll echo other comments. Mr. Collins, thank you for what you are doing. The two pilots on PSA Flight 5342 were ALPA members, and we are absolutely committed at ALPA to do whatever we can in our power to make sure something like this never, ever happens again. Whether it's your presence at an event like this or in the halls of Congress, DOT, NTSB, it's critical to make sure that people don't forget, that we don't let this fall off the congressional agenda. And so thank you. Thank you for what you do. I just want to touch real briefly on three things. The first is the Cantwell legislation, Senator, that you helped bring forward. It is an excellent bill. ALPA has endorsed it, would close that loophole that you were mentioning. And I also just want to point out that it is more comprehensive than the cruise bill. The cruise bill has a lot of good things in it too, but the Cantwell bill has a more aggressive timeline for implementing ADSB in equipage. There's a strong retrofit requirement for commercial aircraft, which is absolutely critical. And the other thing is there's several good provisions in that legislation on staffing, right? And we can talk about technology and we can talk about infrastructure and ATC modernization, but without, we need more controllers, right? We need to make sure there are enough FAA technicians to maintain and upgrade this equipment. And the Cantwell bill looks at that as well. So thank you for your role in bringing that forward, and we hope that serves as the model going forward. The second piece, just real briefly on air traffic control modernization. Like others have said, it's unfortunate it takes a tragedy for government to get in gear, right? But it is we have a critical moment here and an opportunity to do this, and it's complicated and it's complex and it's going to take many years, but it has to get done. The $12.5 billion that Congress has already provided is an excellent down payment, but we know we will need more funding. We also know that, frankly, FAA is going to need to execute better than they have in the past. I'll also give credit to Secretary Duffy. He has been extremely aggressive in pushing this. He's been open and accessible to us and our leadership, and I think for most folks around the table. But we're going to need a more detailed plan from DOT about how they plan to execute this. And we're going to need eventually more funding. Lastly, I just want to bring up aeromedical issues, especially surrounding mental health for pilots and controllers. It's something that there were some good steps taken in the recent FAA reauth bill, but for so long, if a pilot or a controller is suffering from a health issue, particularly in the mental health space, they have been disincentivized to speak up and do the right thing. And we need pilots to be able to, no one here is talking about, a severe illness or mental condition. I mean, obviously, if you are going to be entrusted to fly an aircraft or to control and separate airplanes, there are going to be disqualifying medical conditions, and that's appropriate. But we're talking about things like stress, anxiety, depression, maybe it's a marital issue or going through a loss of a family member. I mean, these are things that people go through, and pilots and controllers have been, for far too long, they have to jeopardize their career when they raise their hand and say, hey, I need help. So there is legislation. It's called the Mental Health in Aviation Act. It is bipartisan. It's actually already passed the House Transportation Committee. It would require FAA to implement a number of consensus recommendations from an expert panel that the FAA convened to look at this process to make sure that pilots and controllers, when they submit their medical documentation and they're cleared by their doctors, that it won't take 6 or 12 or 18 months for them to get cleared to go back to their careers. It's also authorizes some additional funding and staffing at FAA to make sure they have the medical expertise they need. So I believe Senator Duckworth and Senator Hoeven are planning to introduce companion legislation in the Senate. I just wanted to flag that as well. Thank you again for convening us, and looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Senator Warner, Congressman Beyer, for convening this roundtable. My name is Stephen Shems. I'm the Government Affairs Director for the Association of Flight Attendants. We represent flight attendants at 20 airlines, 50,000 members nationwide. To Mr. Collins, we also represented the flight attendants on the PSA flight. So our futures are entwined forever, and we will work with you to make sure that we never forget the tragedies that occurred and that we make the fixes that are necessary. I do want to echo a lot of what's been said around the table, that this is about shared responsibility and shared agenda, and that we all need to make sure that we're working together. Flight attendants, pilots, air traffic controllers all need to be talking, looking out, and making sure that we are speaking up when we say something that is not right, and to feel that we have the right and the privilege to do so. I will say that on safety management systems, they're great and they work and they're well, but we need to make sure that any management system or aviation safety systems protocols are non-punitive. They used to be that you would just come out and report if you saw something wrong, and so that it could be corrected and fixed, but we are seeing now a move towards punitive actions taken against people who speak up and speak out. And so if we want to have a true safety culture, you have to be able to speak openly and honestly about the issues. Happy to be here and happy to participate in any discussions that come across the table. Thank you.
My name is Carlos Aguirre. I'm with the Professional Aviation Safety Specialist. I'm the Secretary Treasurer. I've worked at Miami Air Route Traffic Control Center as a system specialist and also at the FAA Command Center in Warrenton before assuming my position as Secretary Treasurer for PASS. First off, I just want to give my sincere condolences to Mr. Collins and all the families of the tragedy in January. and to make sure that everyone here is a member on this table, member of the aviation ecosystem, and it's our duty to make sure that we get to the bottom of what happened and make sure that it doesn't occur again. Do everything that we can to make sure the safety systems are in place, that a tragedy like this doesn't happen again. PASS represents 11,000 FAA workers. Among these are air transportation safety specialists and aviation safety inspectors. The air transportation system specialists within the technical operations unit ensure functionality of communications, computers, navigational aids, and power systems vital to safe air traffic and the mission of pilots and controllers. They touch nearly every piece of technology in the air traffic control system. We cannot turn on the lights without them. Over the last few years, PASS has been working with FAA and Congress to get the FAA technical workforce staffing numbers healthy again after years of decline. We are happy to see that the FAA is now taking action to hire technicians and surging the hiring of technicians, and that they have in place an aviation workforce plan that will soon be published. At least that's what we hear. The brand-new air traffic control system that's being proposed by the Secretary and the FAA Administrator is a bold and ambitious proposal to modernize the national airspace system. PASS has long stated that the obvious solution to concerns with reliability and operational continuity is expediting new systems in the NAS. We strongly believe that this workforce has the expertise and the capability to assist. We're committed to the mission excuse me, and able to accomplish the work if given the proper staffing and training. We're focusing, making sure that the FAA is focusing on a fully staffed and trained internal workforce. The FAA strengthens long-term resiliency of the NAS by doing so. And we welcome the introduction of the Senate Bill 1985. We support any proposal to add opportunities to improve and strengthen safety management systems. SMS is a core component of predictive and proactive modeling initiatives in aviation, and we're always in support of any bills that would enhance aviation safety. Thank you for having me here.
Well, thank you, everyone. I want to make sure we get really into the heart of this. First of all, just a couple quick comments, Sean. What you say about mental health resonates with me. One of the things that I recall as governor was our National Guard units who were constantly deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan, and there was a huge reluctance to acknowledge mental health issues. And I think we've, in the military, some of that has been removed, but it resonates with me. I want to take a look at that legislation in terms of, air traffic controllers, pilots, flight attendants, others, really makes some sense. I want to, one of the things that I know is already in the public domain, but it just, I'll do this. How many of you use DCA as your kind of home airport? Let's do this, okay. How many of you have had, and press people can answer this too on this. This is not a gotcha question. But one of the things that kind of struck me, this was a great stat out of the first preliminary report. Between October 21 and December of 24, there were 15,214 near midair incidents between planes and helicopters at DCA. Jack, had you heard that number? Is that?
Yes, but they were in close proximity.
Yeah, but again, how many of you have had a landing at DCA where you're not really aware you're a passenger, but you've had the planes coming in for a landing, you divert and you have to come back around? Again, there are such unique components to this airport that we have to grapple with. And and I am not the expert that I used to be on Commerce Committee, and I remember in 2009 I got here and at the Senate, and they said, Senator, we're going to get airport modernization, air traffic control modernization done. We're going to move from the radar to GPS by 2015 or 2018. And I do want to get more on that, but this issue for the non-technical people, and I will try to do it in the simplest way. The ADS-B Tom, what you were talking about is to making sure that there is that signal that goes out from the plane that will let everybody else know, in the night of the tragedy, as you know, the military helicopter didn't have their ADSB on. So they have had an exemption. So the legislation that and I think our bill is better than the cruise bill, but it's kind of all, there's three buckets, shared airspace, how do we deal with this, ADSB, in continued use, really focusing on busy airports, which clearly we fall into, independent review, risk assessments, so that's air traffic safety. The FAA staffing and air traffic controller pipeline. When I was first running for senator, the single best lobbying moment that ever took place was one of your former colleagues, Paul Rinaldi, who was head of the air traffic controller system, and he got me at some event, and I got 20 minutes with him, and he literally scared the hell out of me about if we don't put more people in the air traffic control system and how we were still building back, and literally the stress. And I've worked with air traffic controllers, have huge respect for you guys, but we need more. We need more on the FAA side, and one of my first questions is going to be, with the kind of attack, across the board on, governmental service, has that kind of atmospheric slowed recruitment, or do we have a healthy pipeline? I want to get to that. That'll be the first out of the box. And then, obviously, the unique aspects of sharing information between DoD and FAA and all of the civilian. But why don't we start with, is the pipeline pretty good in terms of people interested? And John, what else do you want to raise on the opening question?
Just piling on to that is, since we've talked about how modernizing air traffic control has been around for a long time, what's different now that's going to actually make it happen?
Yeah.
Why
I'm going to wait
will
for
this
that for
not-
the second bucket, but like that, because that's the really, that's the.
Yeah, so as far as the current, let's say, hiring rate, I mean, I don't have that information directly, but the last that I heard, there is a healthy pipeline. From an air traffic controller standpoint, even though it's healthy, we'd always like to see more people apply for the position. It's an extremely rewarding position, and it's one of the key positions, like we all are, really, to the safety aspect of what we do as a community.
And
Are there bonuses like ICE has right now to get people to sign up?
I am not personally aware of any bonuses. I would have to look into that and get back to you.
And do you have a view? What Mr. Johnson said. I see the value of everybody going through the same system in Oklahoma City on one level, but I also see that does make. Do you guys have a view on a more dispersed network on the training process, or should you start at Oklahoma City and then be able to enhance your skills elsewhere? Do you guys?
So there have been a number of colleges that have been accredited for it's like the CTI program, as you mentioned, and anything like that from a collegiate level to the from a collegiate level, they would assist basically the training that goes on in Oklahoma City. So with the increase in staffing that's needed for air traffic, we welcome absolutely everything and support it 100%.
What about the FAA?
So for the technical workforce, the FAA has come out with a Gateways internship program for technicians. It's a new program where students can, they go to school for a semester and then they work for the FAA as assisting as an intern. Our technicians, they learn about safety management systems, they learn about routine maintenance, and we're encouraged by the people that are able to then stay on after they graduate, they get their degree, and they continue on. They'll be offered a position if they choose to accept it, and if the FAA thinks that they would be a good fit. So that Gateway internships program, I think, can be expanded and go out to more vocational schools, more technical colleges, and get the word out on it so that the pipeline can be.
So both of you feel the pipe, because I mean, again, we both have spent a lot of time on other areas like the VA and others where they're having a real problem with the pipeline, but you've not seen any drop off. Yeah, Mr. Johnson.
Yes, the pipeline, I would say, is great. However, just like pilots, we have a lot of controls retiring. So trying to keep those numbers up with people coming in, I believe is the biggest issue. One of the reasons is, to become a controller, you don't have to go to college, right? You can get hired off the street. However, if you go through the college and through that academia, those numbers, the washout rate isn't as great. So the people that come on in controllers, straight off the street, they don't make it through training. A lot of them, that washout rate is greater. So I will say, getting those numbers, are good, but we have a lot of people retiring just like the pilot industry.
What about, and moving to Don's question, and this is probably old news, my memory was that one of the ability to kind of move from the radar-based system to the GPS system was the reluctance, candidly, of some of the general aviation aircraft to go ahead and make what would be a costly upgrade. Is that still the hump? How far are we getting towards, actually a GPS versus, and others, but please, go ahead. Yeah. And also the point is, if we don't get there, and then we start, as we talk about the unmanned system, the drone system, boy, we're going to be in a heap of trouble. Aren't we?
Right, we're adding new aircraft into the system that are trying to comply with the regulatory requirements to see and avoid, but electronic conspicuity is not there. It's not required of all aircraft. To speak specifically to...
It is on drones, though, right? Isn't it? You got to have that signal. Commercial
It's
drone?
not required, and actually, drones don't broadcast ADS-B out for fear of spectrum saturation. And since they're required to give way to all their aircraft, they're not required to have ADS-B in. But if they're going to fly beyond line of sight, that is a common provision that the FAA approves waivers on. So it's very common to have ADS-B.
But is there? But underneath 400 feet where drones fly, do they pop up on? Are they being registered anywhere in the air traffic system?
They do not. There is currently not a system where a drone is allowed to broadcast on a system that already exists within the FAA. Their position. There's a few exceptions for some larger drones that do have ADS-B, but for the most part, they're actually not allowed to broadcast their position. So certainly in the future, we'd like to get to a place where there's enough spectrum, there's enough allowance, the technology's there that not only, let's say I'm flying a general aviation aircraft, not only can the drone see me when I'm broadcasting ADS-B and give way to me, but I also can see the drone, right, and know its location. So,
Jack, what would you say? We've talked about this for years
What I would say
on
is
air traffic monitoring.
you have to have the will to manage. And we know what we're facing, and there are people who are going to have to make investments in order to comply. We're going to have to broaden the spectrum. We're going to have to put requirements on, anything that's moving in airspace, particularly in congested airspace. And I think that we got to get past what I would call a political issue here, and just, again, have the will to say this is the way it has to be done if we're going to be safe. And right now, the safety issues around congested airspace, but as I said earlier, there'll be congested airspace throughout America. And we're anticipating that, this will be a very, crowded airspace at all different levels, which it hasn't been historically. And we're all sitting here saying that we're anticipating that without building the right technology into, future aircraft, we're just going to
So
create
we're
a
still not
potential
at the
one.
GPS-based system.
No, not where we would like to be, particularly with GA and
Loopholes.
smaller aircraft.
Somebody, because you'll definitely get, and you got that statistic. Remember, there used to be the improvement if we're working on World War II level radar, and if we could actually get to GPS-based, it would. Somebody give me the factoid here about how much greater improvement, how many more planes you could, how much fuel we'd save. There was such overwhelming. Do you remember those?
Yeah, I don't remember the
Why
exact.
don't you give them the stats? Or somebody, where's a staff member to get by her the stats so we can, somebody got those?
I
Give me like
don't
the
have the
top-
exact
Come on, guys,
statistics,
this
but
is-
to your point, I mean, Peter DeFazio, former chairman of the House Transportation Committee, used to joke, next gen should be called never gen. And that's unfortunate, but it rings true, right? And some of the problems I think we've had is including aircraft equipage, particularly some of the regional carriers with older, smaller aircraft. The FAA, when it does have a chance to implement new procedures or performance-based navigation or optimized, descents, that would, in theory, help with efficiency, but also safety. Some of the aircraft aren't properly equipped with the technology to fully take advantage of that, right? And so then you have some pilots who are forced to kind of do workarounds. They have to talk more to controllers, which increases workload. And so the aircraft equipage piece is certainly a part of it. And the other thing that's challenging, right, is, the ATC system, I mean, it's really a system of systems. And you can't just plug and play. You can't just take something out, make upgrades, put it back in. You have to run it continuously. And so the ability to do this is going to be contingent on, obviously, the political will and the management at FAA, but also, frankly, I go back to the funding. And I know, and I get why a lot of members of Congress are perhaps hesitant to give FAA a significant amount of funding. I don't think anyone's asking for a blank check. And that's why we need detailed plans from the FAA and DOT to get
But
this
is there
done.
not even a requirement that for all new aircraft, whether general aviation or commercial, that they still don't have that requirement on a going forward basis?
So the requirement
the
doesn't
Kimball bill.
necessarily pertain to the aircraft. It more pertains to the airspace that the aircraft is flying in. So if you have aircraft, for instance, that are flying into DCA, DCA is considered rural airspace. So technically speaking, you have to be ADS-B equipped to enter that airspace.
There are a few minor exceptions. An aircraft that doesn't have an alternator on board, such as a really old aircraft, can ask for permission to enter. And it doesn't have to have a transponder.
But the notion of having your system still relying on radar versus GPS, there is no requirement that new general aviation aircraft have that built in now if you're buying a new airplane.
Not to just buy it. You can fly in Class G airspace as long as you're outside of Motzi Vale or not above Class C. Then you
So
do
we're not
have to have
even,
it.
we haven't even started this with a requirement in terms of.
Well, but to your point, I mean, in the more congested airspace and the busier airspace, it's. I would say, I defer to you all, but I would say it's very
So
rare
it is
to
going to be
not
never
be
change.
ADS-B.
We're never going to get there. If you don't start at some point saying,
Right.
so that the legacy systems are starting to.
And the retrofit, I mean, that's why with the Campbell
retrofit.
bill and the retrofit requirements are so important. And the commercial fleet, I mean, ADS-B out is fairly ubiquitous on the commercial side, right?
And I'll go to John next, but I just want to, I wish we had that for folks that are not experts. The data that I recall from like 10, 12 years ago, it was an exponential increase. I mean, it was like you've got a more efficient ability to get in and out of airports. You won't have to wait as long. You save fuel. It was like, how can we not do this? And then when you say, when we have GPS-based solutions for every other transportation method, but all right, take it away now.
Just on NeverGen. So one of my favorite brother-in-laws left. He was CIO at Department of Commerce and left in 2012 to go work on the Next Gen project. And that was like 13 years ago now. So I'm just wondering, but back to Jack's wonderful comment. This is about management. Is there a design? Does the design change every couple of years? Is that part of the problem? Has it not been funded? Who is it that's responsible for taking this design and making it operational, both in the airports and in the planes?
I mean, it does come from the top, but however, one of the main reasons that a lot of things get squashed is, those controllers that are in the seats controlling, they have to get trained on that stuff, but there's no one to replace them. So it was more on just the numbers, staffing. I think the overall when we did the study was at 60 to 68% or something. So you have those, you're just not able to train on the new stuff. That's one of the main reasons.
But it's not a case. Is it accurate to say that it's not a case that the technology is changing that much? That the GPS system still is, just starts with a fundamental different baseline than a radar-based system, right?
Yes.
And we've brought it into all other aspects of life. I mean, we've got transmitters on all our cars. What have other parts of the world? One of the things that when I was again more familiar with this, there were other parts of the world that had frankly moved forward. Are there parts of the world that does have a mandated GPS system?
And I will say, the last 5 years of my career, military, I was in the UK. I was stationed in the UK. They did go to a lot of satellite based. When it worked, it worked. However, when it wasn't working, how do you fix it? That was one of the issues that they came to. Ground based, yes, you're able to get the maintenance out there. It's up and running. It's down for maybe a few hours to a few days.
But the difference, I think, right now would be, and I'm going to get way over my skis, is that umpteen years ago, the level of satellite constellation was much smaller than what it is today.
Oh, absolutely.
So you could build redundancy. So anything, I want to make sure we hit a number of topics, and if there's certain things that we've not hit, but we'll go back. Anything else on this system?
Just one sentence, which is that, as we talk about GPS, there's still the urban legend about people passing little slips of paper back and forth in air traffic control. That's the thing that really scares me. Yeah.
Senator, I'd also like to mention that you talk about legacy systems, but that assumes that they're going to be going away sometime. They're really existing systems, the radars and the instrument landing systems, the approach lights. These are continuing to age every day, and it's harder to get spare parts for them. It's harder to do the maintenance for them. So it's something that we have to really look at investing in that existing infrastructure. We're getting a lot of benefits from the GPS satellite-based systems, but also the existing systems aren't going away.
And those if you had GPS, you'd still need lights on the.
Correct.
This is a little bit. I was in Hopewell earlier in the week, and it was Hopewell, Petersburg, and Richmond that had big water crisis. Nobody wants to invest in your water systems until you got a water crisis. Then everybody wants to do it. But what you're talking about sounds like that's kind of.
Yeah.
Is there, so, we put one bucket in terms of, will next gen ever be evergen? That's a bigger macro. Can we zero down on the region? We've talked about federal legislation. Are there other things we need to do? And this will tie in Adam, and we've got some of our local representatives from both the Arlington Board and the Alexandria City Council. Is there a piece of this that needs to be fixed that's not federal legislation, that is either state, local, or community-based? I'm not sure there is, but I don't know.
I think one issue that it's still federal-based legislation, but I think it really involves airports and state and local partners, including law enforcement, is back to the drones and counter UAS. There's legislation that just recently passed the House Transportation Committee, and to give state and local law enforcement the ability to not just detect, but also to potentially mitigate drones that enter restricted airspace. I know airports would be involved in this too. And that's something where it's kind of a narrow slice, but it's a really important slice. I mean, we know it's coming. We need to safely integrate these new aircraft and drones. But I tell you, if one flies too close to Dulles and then you're shutting down that airspace until we can figure out where it's coming from. Is this a threat? Is this an accident? And it just takes, one drone to get sucked into an engine to cause a horrible, horrible problem.
Well, yeah, and you're right. And we deal with that on an occasional basis. And the technology the way it works today, it is detected. Our police department then is able to go out and find the person. But other than that, the mitigation part, no, there is no mitigation as far as what we can do as an airport authority to pull that down, have it land. We're not able to do that at this point.
And let me just, for those of you who don't, we haven't had a lot of that up here, but some of you may remember, like a year ago, there were reports of all these drone swarms around New Jersey. We literally had it over Langley and some of our military installations down in the peninsula. Weeks of drones. My fear was some of these might have been Chinese drones that ultimately there was a couple of people arrested, but we didn't have any protocols, so there was no rules of engagement. So, and what was just kind of crazy, it was not like a one-night flyover. It was like 3 weeks straight, and there were no rules of who's responsible, Is it the military base? Is it the local police department? So there is movement here, but that's something that's going to, but then that's still going to require federal legislation. I can't blame Adam on that locality. Can I
Senator, thanks for having us.
introduce yourself so everybody knows?
County Together, Alexandria City Council, and I would reiterate what you just brought up with the drones. I don't feel that at the local level we're fully equipped to be able to deal with it. And as we've seen with AI and with other technology advances, it's very difficult to try and keep up. So I would definitely be looking to stick Senator Eben to work together for the local and state initiatives, because we look at Amazon, we look at other delivery groups, they've already been test modeling this, right? How we take drones to deliver things, and then that just adds on to people's personal uses, and then people that are using it for nefarious reasons, and we have to be able to react. Our own police force is trying to figure out how do we utilize drones. I believe in Alexandria we have at least 2, but we're still trying to figure out, how high can we go, where can we fly them, what are the privacy issues around it. So I think there's a lot of legislation that still needs to be figured out, but frankly, at the local level, we're not totally prepared to handle.
Yeah.
So we definitely need some support on that.
And I do think it's going to, luckily again, Virginia Tech's a leader on this, and we do have delivery systems down in Blacksburg and Montgomery County. So
They did a demo here too before the building was built. Back then, it was still just a lot.
Great. I'd like to share just along those terms, not to get us too far off track, but remote ID was a regulatory requirement that came out that requires all drones as of 2 years ago to broadcast basically license plate information. It is not perfect by any means, and we were actually just asked by the FAA to reevaluate and develop a test method so that to try to improve or to ensure that the remote ID broadcast on these drones is actually doing what it's supposed to do. And so there's a recognition that there's certainly a shortcoming in being able to, law enforcement entities or anyone being able to detect the presence of a drone and then know who's flying it and which drone it is, which is a great step in the right direction. So this technology just needs improvement.
I know we're kind of, I'm getting the hook already, but we're winding down a little bit. But we've asked most of the questions. You guys are more the experts. Is there some, and other folks in the audience, is there something you want us to hear that's not been raised yet? Please.
One of the things we have right here in the great state of Virginia is NASA Langley Research Center. So I was hoping, it would be nice if they'd have been here today. But with their advanced air mobility and unmanned traffic management research that's going on down there, we certainly want to partner with them and get them going. They're also pushing forward teams on in-time aviation system-wide safety systems where we talk to each other so that we can give what they term actionable intelligence to adaptive agents, to airline pilots and air traffic controllers, because in every one of these mishaps that we've looked at through the years, there's been a piece of information that's been missing to the right person at the right time, but in the meantime, they're just covered up in noise from NOTAMs and other systems. So if we can find the signal in that noise, then we can get that to the right people. They can make the right decisions at the right time. That signal was not available January 29th.
We have been, Don and I both been trying to make sure that we don't lose that basic research that's going on at Langley. It's real concern.
Basic research overall.
Yes.
Especially Langley.
Others that we've not, all right, Buyer, Warner, say all this stuff, but you didn't address X, or you need what's wrong in Bill Y. What else should we be? What else do you want us to know?
I like to push for just more funding for air traffic control simulators. That is the biggest holdup, especially with taking the burden off Oklahoma City to train controllers. We need to get more controllers out and in there, and the way to do it is we're on the right track. Enhanced Air Traffic Collegiate Training Initiative. We are at ATCTI school looking to become enhanced. I think they're about, 5 or 6 now? But the burden is on the university. So that means the university has to come up with the funds to get those simulators. However, for pilot simulators, there's a lot of grants for that. And one of the things is, help us get that funding to get the controllers out there.
How expensive are they?
Currently, I have 3 that we're looking at, from lower to just tower-based simulators, looking at $160,000 install and about $30,000 per year. to do both tower and radar to fully train the controller, you're looking at closer to about 250,000 install and then maintenance 50,000 a year.
You know, obviously, and this meant in hopefully the right way. I've never had a meeting where there's not at least some request for additional funding. So, you know, and part of this is still protecting, and that's again when we whack government funding at the levels of being hit right now. There is, and the awful thing, the tragedy did get us some additional funding in the last legislation. But that is an awful way to govern, that it takes tragedies to move dollars. But this is critically important. You guys want to, I think we're down to, anybody got closing comments? Then Don and I will close out.
I would just like to share one more thing, Senator Warner and Representative Byer. I think the proposed legislation is phenomenal in trying to close the loopholes with ADSB. There are other aviation, like EASA, for example, you know, they have a more cooperative environment. They require transponders on all aircraft, and I think that would be a step in the right
Could you
direction.
explain to Congressman Byer, EASA?
Sure, sorry, the European, this is similar to the FAA, but in Europe. Sorry. And I think it would be a great step in the right direction to make all of our airspace safer, not just those areas that are, you know, where large airports are around Class B. I think it would be, it would go a long way in making sure that we don't have an accident like this that could occur actually outside of a busy airport. Closing these loopholes inside these locations with military aircraft is perfect. It's the right direction. It's going to make our aircraft, our airspace safer, but we should take a step further and encourage everyone to step into the modern age and share their position with all of their aircraft.
I think I'd just like to make a comment that what we heard today is what's really required is a comprehensive approach. There's not one thing that has to be done. Everything has to be done, because any one of the things that we described today could lead to an unfortunate accident. And so I just encourage you to continue to focus on this. Obviously, funding is needed. But again, more importantly, it's everyone in the industry has to rally around how we're going to make this airspace safer. And I think we all see, you know, huge commercial opportunity, whether it's, you know, we generally think of commercial airlines, but the opportunity locally to start taking advantage of drones and some of these other, you know, eVTOLs and others, it's going to be, you know, negatively impacted if we don't step into this issue right now. And to the point that you were making, put requirements on future equipment. You know, dealing with legacy is very complicated, but getting ahead of the curve is where we need to be. Right now, we've been playing catch-up for years, and we need to leapfrog where we are today to make sure that what we design is going to, as I said earlier, is going to accommodate the future.
I just want to say thank you very much. This always a learning experience. And we live in such, just being here in Northern Virginia, it's such a complicated airspace. And the tragedy has just emphasized all that. So anything that we can do to support Sean Duffy, the FAA, whatever we can do in Congress, we're here to do that. So.
Yeah, and I'll just add, you know, again, Secretary Duffy has been responsive. I hope that approach could go across the funding request as well. I appreciate everybody here. Again, particularly Mr. Collins, thank you for being here. I do have wondered at times, in so many ways it all comes back to funding. We don't want to at least I don't want to completely slow down all the potential commercial aspects that have come out of you know, unmanned aircraft, drones. I do worry a little bit that sometimes as we start new industries, we don't want to put any burdens on them, but then that sets a precedent that then those systems don't kick in on the revenue stream. And we've got to figure out at some point, whether after X amount of drones or so much beyond line of sight, we can't just continue to say that management of all the airspace is simply the job of the government without the participants kicking in ways. And, you know, I think I just remember all of the, and come back to you, Tom, a little bit because of your experience as a commercial, or I'm sorry, as a general aviation pilot. You know, the general aviation pilot lobby is very, very strong because it comes from a lot of the rural communities, and trying to get that, you know, any of these requirements going forward, because candidly, Jack, as you said, if we put all the next-gen equipment in, even be starting in 2012 going forward, it would be a lot easier to kind of make that transition. So we're going to keep working on the federal legislation. I do think, you know, the intersection between drones and commercial and GA space, you got a commitment from us that some level of permanent memorial to the victims needs to be part of this going forward, so we never forget. And both of our offices, I know Rachel, and got some folks, Nicholas and others from my staff here, and Jackie, others, we're open for business on this. So keep us informed, let us keep pushing the legislation. If there is a slowdown on the human pipeline, I'd like to hear, because these, whether it's FAA or air traffic controllers, this is not something you can flick a switch and say, okay, we're going to go out. This is a little bit of a jab comment. Unlike the ICE officers who now the administration has decreed only need a 47-day training period because the president is the 47th president, you can't do that with air traffic controllers and FAA safety experts. If you shorten the training period, you're not going to get the safety level we need. So this is something we have to work on at some length. So appreciate everybody. Again, thank you to Virginia Tech and for our audience for being here, and our friends from the press. And we stand adjourned until next session. Thank you. Thank you.